Thank you for coming to the August Planning Commission meeting. Before we begin, please stand if you are able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Burkhart?
Present.
Vice Chair Flynn?
Present.
Commissioner Moylan?
Here.
Chair Tyler? Commissioner Razak?
Present.
And Commissioner Gordon? Here.
Before we go any further, I'd welcome a motion to excuse our missing commissioners.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion or objections? If not, motion is approved. Thank you. Any late changes to the agenda?
No late changes, thank you.
Very good. In that case, we will move forward with the public comment period. This is the first public comment period of the evening. Anyone requesting to speak to the commission regarding any and all items not subject to a specific public hearing, please come forward at this time. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Robin Knight, and I'm a Ridgefield resident. I am not a zoning expert, but I have been reviewing the waterfront mixed-use zoning that was vested by the Port of Ridgefield in 2023, and I have a few questions. I have many concerns about the Port's proposed development for the waterfront, one of which is the 58-room, quote, boutique hotel with a ground floor eatery that they have admitted will be bigger than the McMinimans at Kalama's waterfront. By my estimation, about 45% bigger. Kalama's hotel has 4 floors with a ground floor eatery and a rooftop bar, so essentially 5 stories. To account for the increased capacity, the hotel the Port is proposing would need to be either taller or take up a wider footprint. Can you imagine this size hotel, not on the mighty Columbia River, but on our little Lake River slough? In the Waterfront Mixed-Use Code, section C.5, the similar use provision states that if a proposed use isn't explicitly listed in the waterfront mixed-use table, and I don't see a hotel or lodging listed, it can be approved through a type 1 process. To my understanding, that makes it an administrative determination by the planning director. If I am understanding this accurately, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that means that whether a hotel is right for our waterfront can be decided administratively without ever coming before this commission or the public. So I have to ask, do you agree that a determination of this significance and consequence for our community belongs in a type 1 administrative process, or should uses of that scale require a higher level review with a public hearing? One thing I have heard consistently voiced by residents and waterfront users that I have engaged with is that a hotel and apartment buildings are the least favorable aspects of the Port's plans. They carry significant impacts to traffic and infrastructure that have not been meaningfully addressed, and they forebode increasing limitations on public access and recreational uses for our waterfront, the very things that make our waterfront special, beloved, and a draw to our community. Over 3,300 people have now signed our petition requesting a reconsideration of this plan, and we now have over 700 people in the Preserve Ridgefield Waterfront Group. These numbers represent a growing body of constituents who are unhappy with the Port's plans and are hoping that the city will consider what residents have been saying for years. We don't want a Portland or Vancouver waterfront in Ridgefield. We want our waterfront to remain beautiful, accessible, and focused on recreation and public access. I will have additional items in my second comment period. Thank you.
Thank you. Please step forward.
Hi there, I'm Jan Haig. I am a resident of the county, but the downtown affects all of us. And I realize you are the Planning Commission, but we need to look at the whole picture. So I have a quote from Ethan Perry that he wrote in Greet magazine. The Port of Ridgefield's mission is to responsibly developed land and facilities that support jobs, protect the environment, and create vibrant community spaces, helping strengthen Ridgefield's economy and quality of life. They also want well-planned infrastructure, also saying where we come from helps us understand where we are going and why it matters. So in the supporting the jobs, just taking some of the numbers that we have received, they're talking about 250 apartments at build out, and say they receive $2,500 a month in rent. That equals $500,000 to the Port of Ridgefield and $7 million to the developer that comes from Oregon. That money will not stay in our community. If you are talking jobs, say we have $70,000 jobs. That's 100 jobs that just left Ridgefield. Apartments don't really employ people. You've got a couple here and there. If you include the office buildings, the hotel, restaurants, whatever else, and we double that number, now we have 200 jobs that are leaving Ridgefield and going to Portland. Apartments can go elsewhere. Somebody else can build them there. And where they are planned will be right up against our wildlife refuge. The community doesn't want a huge development. We have one chance to preserve this waterfront and all the resources, the schools, the roads, the water, sewer, can slowly be put in place and keep the area vibrant. And there's nothing wrong with having a heritage site, because we haven't had access to the waterfront for 125 years. Who came before us? The Native Americans. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Cyrus Yamin, 2861 South Royal Road. I looked at the project that was proposed for the waterfront. I think it's pretty short-sighted, because the prediction for the population of the city is 26,000 by before 2030. And the amount of park that they, in this project, allocated for people is much less than accommodating for that much population. Also, the area is a flood zone. I don't know, there's 150 building that they're going to build there. There would be a flood issue, and there's going to be work for the public works here, and that's not a good way to go. It's at this time. Also, is the developer planning to dedicate that park to the city, or is going to be privately owned? That might prevent the public to use it down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Julie Anderson, and I've been a Ridgefield resident for 6 years. I have 3 kids who came along with me. They've spent many hours with me walking along the waterfront. This is one of our favorite places to enjoy nature, exercise, and spend time together as a family. The port's development plan threatens the peaceful nature of the waterfront and will permanently alter how this area is able to be used by residents. I'm especially concerned about the plans for a hotel built on the waterfront. From my understanding, a hotel is not on the list of allowed uses, meaning the planning director could decide alone whether to let it in with no public vote. A decision of this magnitude deserves a public hearing. I have yet to encounter anyone in favor of the current development plan. Additionally, even though the port has claimed they are taking this summer to consider what the community wants, they have also mentioned that Phase 1 is not changing. This plan includes the hotel. I would like to know the role the Planning Commission can play in helping the community's concerns be taken seriously by the port. Can you help us preserve the Ridgefield waterfront? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nancy Fagan, a Ridgefield resident. I'm a member of Preserve Ridgefield Waterfront. I've been engaging with Ridgefield residents about the proposed waterfront development while distributing flyers at downtown events and canvassing door to door. I have not encountered one person who is enthusiastic about this project. The reaction to the scope and density of the plan has ranged from disbelief to anger. One point that has really caught people by surprise is the port's boutique hotel. And that sounds cute, doesn't it, boutique? Well, it sounds cute until you realize that boutique only means that it's not a chain. Their plan is for a 58-room hotel. That's bigger than McMenamin's in Kalama, which, as Robin said, great minds run alike. Can you imagine that sitting on our little lake river versus the Columbia River down there? We have encouraged residents to complete the port survey and to provide their personal comments. My concern is how will the port quantify the data in the comments? I've asked this question directly to the port, but they have provided no answer. The survey is skewed to support the port's plan, so a superficial review of the data may not tell the whole story. I understand that no plans have been submitted yet, so you do not have anything to work from. But I would just ask that when that day comes to please, 1, review the survey, 2, dig into the comments, 3, check in on our petition, which currently runs over 3,300, and number 4, remember those who have stood before you asking for your help in saving this special land. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Zade. I've lived in Ridgefield for 30-plus years. My family and I care deeply about the connection to the Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge. I support economic development. It's actually a pretty good thing to do, but only when it fits Ridgefield's values and protects our natural heritage, and I think a lot of people mentioned the same thing. The port surveyed residents in 2023. But they failed to highlight what the public actually said. Residents explicitly stated they wanted this waterfront to remain a natural recreational space. Residential development was ranked the single least favorable use for this property, and here we are to discuss this. The outcry you're hearing today is because the port's plan ignores its own community data, and I'm sure they spent a lot of money on collecting those. This proposal also violates Ridgefield Development Code, which I had a chance to look into. It's, if you would like to know, it's 18.235030, but I'm sure you guys know this better than I do. But in 3 specific ways. Firstly, a 250-unit residential complex builds a wall of private residency along our shoreline, choking a required public access, and we don't want that. Secondly, a dense residential zone means 24/7 light and traffic, right next to a 5,000-acre migratory refuge. That violates the code's mandate to minimize impacts to wildlife and bird populations. I found that all in your public notes. Third, the WMU code does not list a hotel as an approved use. The port is relying on a loophole, letting the planning director alone approve a similar use. The port calls their 58-room proposal boutique. But true eco-luxury models like the Tenzin Springs and Stevenson's, not too far from here, operates under 20 rooms, specifically to protect the ecosystem. So what I would like to propose instead, and I think a lot of people here would agree, our waterfront has exactly one access point. We all know where that is. It cannot handle massive bottlenecks. We already host a premier regional asset, and I'm not sure if you know, but the boat ramp with 12,000 annual boat launches is right here in Ridgefield, more than any other shoreline boat launch in this vicinity. So I would propose instead of corporate blocks, let's build a river-centric, community-first waterfront, local eateries, bait and tackle shops, marine outfitters, kayak and paddleboard rentals, open green space and walking paths along Lake River. This creates true local jobs, long-term tax growth, without destroying our environment and our character. I respectfully ask the Commission to uphold the law and protect our future. Please advise City Council to deny this proposal as written. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is John Dotson, city residence, and I'm here in a little different from what you've heard so far. If you have a pencil, you might write this down. It's 6 ppdq. This is a toxin. Now, if y'all drove here, you put it out in the road already. It's a product that keeps tires from cracking. Every tire made does that, and it expels every time you drive. That's it. So the University of Washington's been working on this with the toxic waste people and others around, and they do have a project where you have to get a ecology test taken prior to your buildings going up. It takes a baseline of how much is in the river. This will be your river right down here, Lake River, because it goes in from the Columbia and out at the base, back in the Columbia. This toxin directly kills coho salmon. That's all it does. It also kills a couple others, Chinook and lake trout. For whatever reason, that's what it does. The Puyallup Indian tribe is working with the state trying to figure out what to do because they're losing coho salmon. Anyway, as we go through this, my question is, and they couldn't find it, that you have a permit yet from your builder from the river, and it's required by state and federal law. Now this permit sets a baseline of what's in the river the day they start building, and every year after that, what discharges from their property into the river. And at which point they have to come up with a plan for taking all that water and keeping it from going into the river. So I have two questions. First of all, this should be the foundation for the whole permit building process. Now they're talking about 3 stages. They may be trying to put together 3 different systems, so when the first one is taken, it's taken just for that one section. Then a year later, the next one. But by then, there's more toxin in the water, so the baseline raises to that. And then the third one does the same thing. And anything else after that will raise that toxin input level. So I want to make sure everybody understands that's on the table. I asked people, they haven't seen that permit yet. So there's a big issue there that you need to take. Understand, the EPA is also looking at it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. I don't know if you've heard anything about the waterfront going on, but I'm here to talk about that. I'd like to just share some things.
Sir, I'm sorry. Could you please state your name?
Dion Hess, Ridgefield, Washington. Sorry
Thank
about that. Anyway, just about some contacts that are being made out there at the public. I have a friend that's been down at the boat launch talking to boaters as they're going in. He's made 183 contacts. 180 of them have been opposed to what's going on at the waterfront. I was down there walking my dog just recently, and there's an attendant down there, a very nice lady. Went up and started talking to her, and I says, hey, is anybody coming down here talking about what's going on with this development? She goes, oh yeah, a lot. And I go, really? I go, is there anybody opposed to it? And her term was everybody. And I don't like to use the term everybody. I'd rather use 180 out of 183. I had a friend of mine that lives in an HOA up off Hillhurst, and they had a get-together neighborhood get-together last weekend. There's 25 households represented there, and they started talking, and he sort of joined the conversation, and they're talking about, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I don't have it here to present, but they feel there's 75 houses in that neighborhood that they're going to get a petition signed by all 75 opposing what's going on at the waterfront. In my neighborhood alone, I've got 14 yard signs out of the 20 houses down there. I bought 2, brought them down, put them in. I had people knocking on my door wanting to know where to get them. I collected money. I heard there was a lady selling them down at Davis Park out of the trunk of her car. I went down there and you could get lawn signs and t-shirts. It reminded me of a 1980s AC/DC concert. You could buy your t-shirts and a few other things from what I was told. We've been called, people opposing this, we've been called hippies, liars, and the loud minority. And I want to focus a little bit on the loud minority. Really the opposite of that's the silent majority. In the late 1960s, it was popularized by the US government to continue one of the biggest mistakes our government ever made, the Vietnam War. And I think when a government agency has to stand behind the silent majority, when there's so many people in the community opposing it for so many different reasons, I really think there's something wrong. So anyway, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Hi there, my name is Shauna Fisher, and I'm actually reading this comment on behalf of a friend that could not be here tonight. So, hello, my name is Hillary Wheeler, and I have concerns about the future of our downtown. I love Ridgefield. My husband and I moved here over 10 years ago, knowing it was considered the fastest growing town in the state. We voted for the bond to build the new middle school and the Rourke. We excitedly attended the grand opening of Rose Hours. We love our new Costco, and I'm excited for there to be a hotel in Ridgefield, just not downtown, not at the waterfront. From my understanding, the city would have to grant permission for the port to build their proposed monstrosity, supposedly 45% bigger than the hotel in Kalama. Lake River is not the vast Columbia like Kalama has. That building will choke us. I could tell you all the reasons I'm against this high-density building proposal the port has presented, but I'm hoping my peers will cover those numerous topics tonight. I instead want to share a story from last weekend that I believe will just be the beginning. I walked from my home to the waterfront because my 3-year-old daughter desperately wanted to see the dragon boats in action. As I pushed my 2 kids in their stroller down the overpass, I could hear a loud, fast car coming up behind us. We were on the curb, and thank goodness we were on the inside sidewalk. That car was going so fast they couldn't make the turn. They had to veer into the oncoming lane to make it. It was terrifying to watch as 2 ladies were walking up the other side. After the car passed us, we all stood there dumbfounded, commenting on how fast and almost out of control they were. The car did not have Washington plates, a visitor. With a hotel and residential at our waterfront, this story will be our new normal daily, not just for our amazing events. And it will start all the way at the top of Pioneer, impacting families driving home, accessing our new community center, parents picking up and dropping off their kids at school, and most importantly, our children who are still able to hold their fleeting youth walking and biking all over downtown. I love that they have a space to congregate and be kids for just a little bit longer. I would really love to see a well-thought-out plan for our waterfront and downtown that is truly for the betterment of our current community. We should not have to build hundreds of apartments or a disproportionate hotel to sustain Palindrome's dream for our city. This is a space ours, and it should remain ours for the citizens of Ridgefield. We deserve a bigger voice and not just a one-sided survey. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that we have, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
My name's John Cole. I'm a 30-year townie. So as Ridgefield grows, and I know you folks are looking to update the long-term growth plan, there's a lot of emphasis on increasing the housing density to limit the urban sprawl, which, it makes sense. We need to keep some farms so we can grow food some places, and things like that. But the impacts need to be considered and mitigated as much as possible. And this growth really should only happen where there's infrastructure to support it. One of the areas that we're talking about developing is the waterfront, and how this is completed will seriously affect the character and livability of the downtown core. Also note that there's zero infrastructure there presently. The waterfront is an asset to this community and has the potential to further define Ridgefield as special or just another overdeveloped community that used to be nice. I observed a perfect example of this at the Paddle for Life this past weekend. A little different story about what happened on the bridge. So I was on my way down to the event, and I was real close by a little family of 4. And as we rounded the corner, Mom said, "Wow, look at this beautiful spot." And, and I got to agree, you look out over the waterfront with the refuge in the background and all these cars parked. I mean, that place was thriving, booming. It was really cool. So anyhow, you can't really put a price on an asset like that to our community. But once you turn it into glitch, it's gone forever. So as the development occurs, it would seem to make sense, if any significant development occurs, it seems to make Paddle for Life and any events like it impossible due to a lack of open space, which would be a loss for everyone. Please consider this as we move into the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Mason. I'm going to take a little bit different approach than some of the other folks have taken. I really love and appreciate the comments and the passion that they've exhibited. I've been a resident of Clark County for the last 39 years. Lived in the Salmon Creek area for 25 of those years, and about 14 years ago moved to Ridgefield. That move was, I'm going to say, necessitated because of the city of Vancouver. I had a building downtown Vancouver on Mill Plain, and they proposed a 90-story apartment unit with 30 parking spaces. There might have been 45, but woefully under the number of parking spaces that should have been there. I went to meetings just like this, spoke to the Vancouver City Council, spoke to the parking committees, and about the 4th or 5th meeting that I went to, I was making my comments, and then this was an interactive rather than me just talking. It was interactive. One of the people on the panel said, Mr. Mason, what's taking place in the city of Vancouver is called urbanization. Some people like it and some people don't. And there was a pregnant pause, and I said, so what you're telling me is, if I don't like it, I should leave. And I got a shrug. So I said, well, you've answered my question. I'm not going to waste any more time with you. I'm going to walk up the street to my building. I'm going to call a realtor, put it up for sale, and sell it. And I did. It wasn't quite that quick, but we did get it sold. And then we started looking around for some place that was user-friendly for our business. And we bought another building here in Ridgefield and eventually moved from Salmon Creek to here. And I'm running out of time. Anyway, I see a lot of the same scenario taking place that took place down there. The city was pointing fingers at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was saying, no, this isn't going to happen. I just spent a few hours down there this past weekend, and the waterfront is beautiful. There weren't very many people there, but I made a left turn instead of a right turn out of the waterfront area and went down towards the old train terminal, and it's disgusting. And I'm not suggesting that that's what will happen here, but it very well could. So anyway, think long and hard before building a huge hotel or doing away with that jewel that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Nancy Freeman, and I live here in Ridgefield. I don't have any prepared remarks, but I do want to share that that's a very special place down there, the waterfront. And the views, the wildlife, it just doesn't seem to fit with what I thought was the vision for Ridgefield of having high density up by the freeway and down towards downtown to be less dense. So when you put a hotel, multi-story, you lose your view. You lose your ability to use that area for recreation and just for the beauty of it in the area. I think it's a great draw for many people because it is a special place. And once it's all built up, it's not coming back. And we have lots of area that's getting built up, and that's all fine. But maybe we should preserve this place. So that's it.
Thank you. Sir?
Hello, my name is Pat Freeman. I've been here for about 20 years. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you guys for what you do, volunteering to be a member of this planning commission, and that's pretty admirable of you. 20 years ago, Ridgefield was 4,000 people or less. One of the defining things of Ridgefield at the time was planning ahead. The plan was that there was going to be single-family homes towards downtown and this area. And then as you got closer to the interstate, that it would become denser housing. And this is not following that plan. I mean, putting dense housing down on the waterfront doesn't make much sense when you compare it to the original plans for Ridgefield to grow. And the other thing is the wildlife. All right, we're talking about putting apartments right next to Carty Lake. One thing I love to do was take my dog and go hiking down there early in the morning. Monday through Friday, there were very few birds on that lake because back then, the Public Works Department was right there beside the lake. But on Saturdays and on Sundays, they didn't go to work. And the birds knew. And they flocked to the place, and there were so many more on the weekends versus during the week. So we'd like to look at it as a place for animals and for us to enjoy in the future. And putting these buildings down there in the volume that they're talking about is just not the future that I was looking forward to. I do appreciate your effort. If there's something that you can help with, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Williams. I'm a 35-year resident of Ridgefield. Raised my family here. Spent a lot of time recreating on the Columbia River. I've been the one who's, well, not the one. My friend Dion mentioned earlier, I've had a very large engagement with the community using the launch ramp. And overwhelmingly, when I mention the plans that the port has, it's met with just befuddlement. I ask a lot of these people how long they've been residents of Ridgefield, and some of them, year, 2, maybe 3. We built up this community, and overwhelmingly, they all agree that the small town quaintness of Ridgefield and the access to the waterway was a deciding factor. Now, these are people that are buying jet skis, pontoon boats, fishing boats, these sort of things. So obviously, it's one segment of the community I'm talking to. But that's the sentiment, and we invite all these people into our community, and of course they're going to want to recreate in our community. And then we tell them, well, that was short-lived. I'm glad you bought that $150,000 ski Nautique, because now you're not going to have, unless the sportsmen are going to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning. The small little postage spot that they have for us to launch our boats is going to be used up by 7 in the morning, and then everyone else who comes, they can't park in town. They can't, I mean, it's not a good look to invite people into our community and then tell them you can't recreate here. And appreciate you guys listening to my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Glassman. I'm a resident of Ridgefield. At times, we're standing in two different places at once. On paper, we're discussing financing, leases, density, and zoning, but outside these walls, we're talking about a waterfront that will define Ridgefield for a long time. The shoreline carried the burdens of industry for decades. It absorbed contamination, hard work, and the costs of a different era. Now it has a chance to become something that gives back, a place where people gather, community exists, and where the landscape itself becomes part of us. The mixed-use district doesn't simply describe development. It describes a waterfront for public access, recreation, community gathering, economic opportunity, and a thoughtful transition to the wildlife refuge. Those aren't just words in the code. They are the purpose of the district. Documents describe decades of future phases, future leases, decisions, and before those decisions quietly become permanent, the community deserves clear answers. What is already vested, what could still be shaped, what public benefits are guaranteed. Growth pays for growth. Will growth truly pay for the infrastructure and public spaces it requires? And will the public continue to have meaningful voice as future phases move forward? Most importantly, what kind of place are we leaving behind? A waterfront should feel as though it grew from the shoreline, not as though it landed there, like SimCity, if you remember that game. Its buildings should belong to the river, the trees, the refuge, and the scale of Ridgefield. They should frame the landscape rather than compete with it. One day, these discussions and renderings will disappear. They'll become the horizon people see when they walk to the water, the backdrop and family photographs, and the landscape future generations inherit. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christine Posey, and I've been a resident of Ridgefield for 21 years. This is more of an emotional plea, I guess, because my family and I have enjoyed the port for years as we take walks down there many times every week. And we enjoy the wildlife, which I think would just change the idea, first of all, of having a boutique hotel. I thought, when I first heard that, I thought it was a joke. And it makes me really sad to imagine that that beautiful area downtown will be, the wildlife will be disturbed. And probably, you know, like many people have said, once this area is changed, it's never going to go back. But I want to share with you things that I've seen, and if you've spent any time down there, then you guys have seen it too. But kids learning how to ride a bike on the path. I've seen this man down there many times, probably, you know, early in the morning. He's got a walker with a seat, and he has a dog, an old dog with a long leash, and he walks from maybe the kayak launch to the first corner, you know, in the bend where you go around the lake. He takes his time and he sits. His dog rests. I can walk back and forth and he's still not done with that distance, right? He will never be able to do that if we end up with hundreds of apartment buildings and boutique hotels. How's that going to be safe for people that enjoy the peace and the safe walking path? It's so unique to have something like that in a community as beautiful as ours, and to me, it's the most special place in Ridgefield. And if you change it, it's just, like I said, and like other people have said, it won't be the same and you can't go back. Thank you.
A little shorter than everyone else. Good evening. My name is Suki, and I grew up in Ridgefield and purchased my first home here 7 years ago. I, like many of my neighbors, am here asking for your consideration in helping preserve our precious waterfront. I'm doing my best to educate myself on both the city and the port's responsibilities in this process by attending as many meetings and asking as many questions as I can. I am not a zoning expert, but have some concerns about the mixed-use zoning down on our waterfront and would love to see that the community has a say in such a major decision. My son and I walk down at the waterfront daily. He enjoys identifying birds and various other animals living down there. In fact, due to the condition of many downtown sidewalks and lack of safe crosswalks, it's the best place for our 4-year-old to learn to ride his bike. Our kids deserve a safe place to play and explore. With all of the growth we have seen over the last decade, we all deserve a space free of traffic and noise. This would be a wonderful space to expand our recreational opportunities in Ridgefield. The Port of Ridgefield has shared a high-density development plan, which has raised many concerns in our community. While they have encouraged the community to share their concerns and ideas, they have simultaneously told the community that Phase 1 is not up for negotiation. A hotel and additional housing do not seem appropriate next to a national wildlife refuge, which is home to many animals and critical for our migratory birds. Not only must the wildlife be considered with such a plan, but the additional infrastructure needed to support this concept should be a top priority for the city and the port. I already struggled across Pioneer Street during busy traffic times, like elementary school drop-off and pickup. I cannot imagine adding the additional cars for housing and a hotel. Our waterfront sets us apart from so many other cities in this county. It is special to so many residents and families, and we should take development of this space very seriously. I care deeply about preserving the natural setting, protecting our wildlife, and maintaining that feeling we get of peace and respite from the development in the rest of this city. 3 minutes isn't nearly enough time to express how important this space is to my family. While many of us don't want to see any development, this is an opportunity to work together to responsibly develop this space and to ensure that the community's quality of life is improved and preserved. Thank you for your time.
To the folks online, I promise we will get to you.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission and neighbors. My name is Vicki Olson. I've lived in the community 18 years. And I, like so many here tonight, I care deeply about the heart and soul of Ridgefield. Our waterfront is one of the most precious, irreplaceable gifts our community has. It's small, it's delicate, and once we build over it, it'll be gone forever. I'm standing here tonight, not out of anger, but out of deep concern for how fast this project is moving and how little input the people who live here seem to have. We keep hearing that Phase 1, which packages a boutique hotel, restaurant, and low-income housing into this tight footprint, is non-negotiable. Why? Have agreements already been signed with palindrome developers behind closed doors before the community has even had a say? When a major decision is labeled non-negotiable, it leaves us feeling shut out of our own town's future. If we want to build a waterfront that truly serves Ridgefield, we need to look at options that fit our town's actual needs while still respecting developer revenue. For instance, instead of a high-density, low-income housing, as a friend recently told me, which I thought was a fabulous idea, why not consider having an assisted living facility? That would still generate steady revenue for the developers, but it would directly serve our local aging population, giving our parents and grandparents a beautiful place to stay, close to their families, right here in Ridgefield. Beyond the use itself, the process leaves major questions unanswered. On the hotel and land use, under Code Section 18235-030C5, a hotel isn't even explicitly listed as an allowed use. It relies on a similar use determination by the planning director. A decision of this magnitude for our waterfront shouldn't rest on a single administrative desk without a full formal public hearing. On views and sightlines, our under code section, same code, but E5 and E6, view and exceptions of the river and the wildlife refuge can be granted simply by a Port Commission vote and director sign-off, completely bypassing the Planning Commission and the public. Why are the community's views of our natural refuge left out of the equation? On building heights, the 75-foot cap sounds like a limit on paper, but with the rooftop equipment exceptions, these structures could loom much higher. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, if there is anyone else in person, let's take a break real quick and turn to our folks online. If I could ask just everyone here in person to please keep the whispers to 0. It is sometimes a little bit hard to hear online, so thank you for being considerate to our fellow citizens.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. Sarah Scott, 17 years Ridgefield residence. I think that people move and visit Ridgefield because of its uniqueness and its friendly, welcoming manner. I know I did. I first checked out the teeny little library, and I was sitting at the computer, and Charlotte came and served me hors d'oeuvres at the computer. I mean, this was the first time I had allowed food in the library, but let alone this woman was serving me an hors d'oeuvre. It was great. I went up to the high school. I was kind of tired of the Wildcats, the Bears as mascots. And I rolled down my window and I asked a gentleman, what are the mascots here? And he said, Spudders. And I said, what? And this was getting good. I took one step into the little funky coffee shop on Main Street and realized it was still an operating theater. And the deal was sealed. I moved. I'd like to keep Ridgefield unique. I think that's very important. To have a vast, beautiful, natural, open space. It's so versatile. It's like, if you go down there, it's like looking over a gorgeous body of water or a grasslands prairie. I implore all of you, please reach out to us. Reach out to Robin, Wendy, me, anybody, the organizers. I sat up there like you're sitting up there. As a Parks Board member, I sat there and I made a concerted effort to reach out to everybody who spoke with concerns. I feel like that's our job if we sit there, is to interact with our neighbors. And please don't feel like you can't help us. You can help the people who want to preserve the waterfront. Unfortunately, truly unfortunately and unbelievably, the 3 commissioners have completely stonewalled us. I want to say that the 3 commissioners have completely stonewalled us. Back in April, we asked them questions they said they would answer, and it keeps being repeated. They keep saying they'll answer us, and there's no answer. So please reach out to us. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. And I see we have another hand raised online. Go ahead, Mr. Byrne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I've been watching, I live in the Pioneer end of Ridgefield, and I've been watching the port, the cleanup project, and they've been talking about how they hope to rectify the waterfront. For 5 years, they've been talking about parks and open space. And just currently, within the last year, they're talking about hotels and multi-story, multifamily housing. That was not what they were talking when they were first discussing the refuge. What they're proposing, particularly the hotel and the multi-story buildings, will interfere with the refuge. It'll create noise and lights which will cause the birds and other species to avoid them. So we need your help. We need as much public input as much as possible. We don't need a decision made by one person, a planning director, or a port commissioner. Please help us out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Just a reminder to anyone online, if you do want to speak, please use the raise hand feature. And if there is anyone else in person who'd like to speak, I welcome you to come forward at this time. State your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jamie Kaiser. I've lived in Ridgefield for 9 years. I didn't write anything down, so this is just going to be shooting from the hip. We have enough development, and I think the development belongs up by the I-5 corridor. I mean, Legacy Trail Apartments is going to double in size. They're building apartments next to the grocery outlet. I have no idea what's planned on the other side over by Keller Plumbing Supply, but downtown and the waterfront is not the right place for what they're proposing. And I know myself and those of us who've come to speak, we're asking you to help make a change, because it's like hitting your head against a brick wall dealing with the port. I've asked them direct questions via email. I get back some copy and paste response. I'm not getting, and it's one question, why is phase 1 set in stone? Tell me why. You know, have you signed something with Palindrome? And I'm sure you guys have done your homework. Palindrome does have a questionable past. I don't think we should be doing business with Palindrome. And I really think the waterfront, that park that they think is, what was that one article? The park that everybody's been waiting for. That's not what we want. When they did the survey, it made it sound like we were giving our responses to that whole area, that survey, that only had 1,500 people that responded. Supposedly they sent it out to everybody, which was 10,000. They got 1,500 responses. Nobody wanted a hotel or apartments. I know this is all about making money for them, but I think what they're proposing is astronomical for what their needs are, because I know they do have the cleanup that they have to pay for, but I think this is wrong. And for you, and I've told City Council this and the Port Commissioners, this is your legacy. This is your resume. You know, for Claire Lust, if she approves a hotel or the things that the community doesn't want, to me that's a resume killer, not a resume builder, because this is your legacy that you're leaving behind. I think that right now there's at least 3,300 people that have signed to say that they are opposed to this development. You know, that is more than double the initial responses, and that's something to take seriously. And it's disappointing because I've been told that somebody, now I didn't hear it directly, that the Port Commissioners think, oh, it's just a small group of hippies. We don't really care what they have to say. But we are the community. This is our downtown Ridgefield. And when I went out to give flyers when we first started this, and I talked to people, they love old downtown. And if you build that development, that ruins that. And then I questioned too, I see another retail store went out of business up by I-5. I see that they haven't filled all the spaces over by Legacy Trails. I see that they're still trying to get people to get in at the Costco complex. I don't see retail down at the waterfront being successful. Our downtown restaurants are already struggling. And I know that their justification is, well, we'll build the apartments because those people will keep these places afloat. Well, that's not happening. Look up at I-5. You know, we're not keeping those residences or those retails alive. And this year, I think it's the most housing permits since 2022, and we still can't keep the retail alive. So that's my 2 cents.
Just want to remind everyone that we will have a public comment period later as well. And you are allowed to speak at the second one if you have already been to the podium. So do with that what you will. If there is anyone else who'd like to speak at this point, now would be the time. And if not, we'll close the public comment period. I turn to my fellow commissioners now to ask if they have had a chance to review last month's minutes, if they have any questions or comments or corrections. If not, I'd welcome a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. If there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Motion passes unanimously. On to the business portion, Ms. Lust.
Thank you, Vice Chair Flynn. The business portion of this meeting will be a review of 4 of the draft elements of the 20-year Comprehensive Growth Plan Update and Vision Ridgefield 2045. This is going to be similar in format to our previous meeting in July, where we went through the first batch of elements. The goal is to obtain feedback from council to further refine these elements before they're eventually brought back to both Planning Commission and City Council for public hearings. This evening is just for presentation, discussion, and feedback. We're not requesting any hearing, not requesting any formal recommendations to council at this point. All right, next slide, please. Oh, I do have it. Thank you. Maybe. There you go. Perfect, thank you. All right, so the 4 elements of the comp plan that are in your packet, hopefully have been reviewed, and we'll discuss this evening are land use, transportation, housing, and climate change and resiliency. And then at the end of our work, we'll give some next steps and schedule updates as well. Okay, again, the goal for this evening is to get feedback on the draft goals and policies to further refine that policy language, and eventually, as next steps, go to public hearings before Planning Commission and Council. All right, so as we did last month, I'm going to give an overview of some of the reasoning behind each of these elements existing. These are all mandatory elements of the comp plan, and then give sort of an overview of the draft policy language that has been put together. And then we'll turn it back to you, Vice Chair Flynn, for discussion and questions on anything that you've gone through in the packet as far as specific goal and policy language. So the first of the 4 topics, again, is land use. Balancing growth, infrastructure investment, economic development, environmental resources, and community character is the mandate. Per Washington State and Clark County, the population of Ridgefield is projected to increase to over 27,000 residents by 2045. That's our planning horizon. And that breaks down into roughly 5,800 housing units and 9,300 jobs. And through this process, the Planning Commission and Council's vision for the land use element has been to direct growth in a way that makes sense for the community through mixed-use centers, targeted employment areas, infill, redevelopment, and strategic growth area expansion. Next slide. I don't know if mine's going to work, sorry. Okay, so as an overview of the goal and policy direction that is in your packet, key points are planning for balanced growth by maintaining sufficient land capacity for projected housing and employment needs, supporting efficient infill development where appropriate, focusing development in connected areas served by infrastructure and public facilities, supporting mixed-use centers, walkable neighborhoods, and employment hubs, expanding housing options, and preserving existing environmental resources and Ridgefield's unique identity. So with that, I'll leave that summary on the slide while I pass it back to you, commissioners, for discussion, comments, feedback on the draft land use goals and policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. Any questions or comments from the commissioners on this section?
Claire, could you just explain to me what infill refers to?
Sure. Typically, infill refers to, I'll give an example. In our downtown would be the TMI building with the police station. It's typically in a established neighborhood with a lot or lots that are vacant, or someone is selling them, and then they're developed with a new use.
Thank you.
2.1.4, there's a provision in there that talks about facilitating infill development. What does facilitating look like? And beyond that, should there be some sort of word like incentivize used instead? I think that's one of those things that as a commission and even at the council level that we've expressed interest to make sure that we're promoting infill, especially on the climate section when we get to that.
Yeah, I can certainly look at massaging that language in there if the Planning Commission gives that direction. But facilitating is a broad term that can include incentivizing, it can include zoning provisions, development code provisions.
I'll let other commissioners speak first while I gather my thoughts on other sections.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Lust, on page 12, policy number 2.3.6, consider adopting the Wildland Urban Interface Code. And I have two questions associated with that. Question one is if the city adopts that, is that enforceable? That's one question. The second question is, as the city becomes more urbanized, does this still have value in reducing or preventing wildfire risks?
To answer your first question, yes. If the city adopts a code, then it is enforceable.
Okay.
Your second question, I would say, is perhaps more of a matter of policy direction as to whether it's something that is valued as part of our regulatory scheme. Or perhaps I'm misunderstanding the second question.
Well, I guess where I'm coming from is the code is, in practice, is to help prevent wildfires, right? And as the city becomes more urbanized, there may be less probability or incidence of wildfire in the city, in an urbanized area.
Ms. Lust, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state fire marshal sets the designations for what is considered a medium, low, or high fire risk, and therefore the wildland urban interface is based off those low, medium, and highs, and that dictates, based on the WUI section of the building code, what your provisions are, right?
That is my understanding, yes. Thank you.
And so it's a building code subset.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. Policy on the next page, policy 2.4.2. I would like to see language added that enhancing tree canopies via tree planting strategies, including public and private funding sources, because that would help to enhance neighborhood identity, climate change, or partially address climate change, etc. on the same page, policy 2.5.5, where it says support a vibrant waterfront district along Lake River by promoting a mix of ground floor, commercial, office, recreational, and residential uses, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess my question is, would that be the city's mandate, or is that the Port of Ridgefield's mandate, since it's along Lake River?
So it is in the city, and the city does have zoning jurisdiction. So at the policy level, it is the city's prerogative to create high-level policy and then implementing code.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Couple more items. 2.3.2 talks about residential design standards. Will this section, as it relates to the code provisions, necessitate a modernization of some of the design requirements, the prescriptive design requirements?
Certainly the residential design requirements are something in our annual code updates we've looked at before and would expect to look at again as part of future updates. And if this is adopted, that is sort of creates the imperative to audit that code section, basically.
Perfect. And then 2.3.2 talks about, anticipate or neighborhood identity or enhancing neighborhood identity. And I do think Ridgefield has each neighborhood has a nice distinct neighborhood identity, but I didn't really see much in the way of what that looks like from a placemaking standpoint. Is there any ideas that you had in mind in terms of what that could look like in terms of a placemaking standpoint?
I think that's up for discussion. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll make a suggestion. Maybe specifying a little bit more about, support or lending support for, entry features, supporting wayfinding signage, fencing that aligns with all these different things. Anything to kind of create a design motif throughout a community, I think is good. Obviously, I'm not a fan of things being too prescriptive, because then it doesn't really allow for lots of creativity, but something that is good, nice, broad, overarching guiding principles would be good. That's a little bit more specific, I think, than the general statement that's in there now. That's it. That's all my comments for section 2.
Any other questions or comments?
I do. Ms. Austin, policy 2.5.1, this talks about encouraging pedestrian interaction in commercial development and human scale elements. Can you provide a little color to what the city's vision for pedestrian interaction is? And what I'm trying to understand is we continue to have large commercial developments essentially pop up with their back facing the street. And so I'm wondering how we cross the chasm there.
Definitely, yeah. And I think this is something our current code does contemplate. And I think this draft policy language is saying let's keep that priority and perhaps massage how it's implemented to be more effective. In terms of pedestrian scale environment in a commercial setting, things we've looked at before in projects include building entries, pedestrian sidewalk connections between parking areas and main entries, and then on sides of buildings facing the street, enhanced landscaping, enhanced, even if it's the back of the building, enhanced architectural features, so it's not a totally blank wall, things like that.
So is the general idea for this policy to say we'll develop and enforce a stronger opinion of how this should play out on the ground? So I'm thinking about the Hillhurst developments, for example, Hillhurst Center. It technically does have lots of street-facing windows, but they are all blacked out because of how the TI was built out on the interior. And so, yes, it has windows, but pedestrian interaction from the street, not so much. You're still walking around to the other side of the building where the cars do pull up to the front side of the building, but pedestrians are the ones sort of doing the loop. Stones in the initial plans presented to the city became a drive-through, obviously not very pedestrian friendly. So I'm trying to understand if this is the policy that then says we're going to have more teeth in the development code so that we will truly enforce this vision, or allow developers to continue to sort of tap dance around what it is we're trying to do in the communities.
Yeah, I think the purpose of the policy language is ultimately to drive the code. So similar to my answer to Mr. Borkhart's question, I think having this policy in the comp plan sort of drives, when we look at, over the next years, probably in phases, auditing the code to make sure it's correctly implementing the policy, then it becomes, yeah, that's something we look at.
Great. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Lust, please move on to the next section.
Absolutely. Thank you, commissioners, for your feedback. Very helpful. All right. The second topic we are going through this evening is transportation, obviously a topic that ties in very closely to land use, as well as other elements of the comp plan. So some key points here in the overview. Have the prerogative to look at creating a safe, efficient, multimodal transportation system coordinated through different agencies supporting that work. Growth, the projected growth over the planning range through 2045 is generating, as one would expect, a lot of new trips, which increases demand on the transportation system. Traffic studies through this project also, unsurprisingly, show several key intersections projected to experience deficiencies by 2045 without targeted transportation investments. And then in this comp plan round, the state legislation is requiring consideration of climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, and vehicle miles traveled as part of jurisdiction's transportation planning. And again, back to investments. A key point of growing and maintaining a transportation system is figuring out what investments where are needed to create and maintain safety and good system performance as the city grows. I'll note that the transportation element of the comp plan works together with the Transportation Capital Facilities Plan, which was updated in 2025 and becomes an appendix to the comp plan. That's the document that has analysis of deficiencies in the system for different types of traffic, vehicle traffic, as well as bicycle and pedestrian traffic, analyzes gaps in the network and uses that data to come up with a project list. And that is required to be a 6-year project list. I believe we contemplate 6 to 10 years. And we use that list as a prioritization tool. So that's sort of a parallel document to this. The transportation element is, again, that high-level policy language that sort of supports, in both ways, the Transportation Capital Facilities Plan. So draft policy direction, developing a safe, efficient, and connected multimodal transportation system, prioritizing complete streets principles to improve access and mobility for all modes of transportation, back to that multimodal theme, improving connectivity through strategic investments, focusing growth in mixed-use centers, walkable neighborhoods, enhancing safety, and preserving freight mobility and access to employment. With that, again, I will turn it over to you, Vice Chair Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. Commissioners, any questions?
I'll just ask one general overarching question. Trails. I think one of our biggest assets here in this community is trails, and our biggest opportunities as well in terms of supporting alternative modes of transportation. I know personally I would love to be able to walk and bike wherever. I bike to downtown as much as I possibly can. And it is not easy to get down here from Hillhurst. So, whatever method of supporting, especially as we grow and get developments that are able to fill in the gaps that we currently have. But as part of that, I noticed that road improvements are obviously listed as supported by TIF, but I didn't know if we could, and I don't know the answer to this question, have trails, given that they are a multimodal asset, funded under TIF, or if that's something that is more a parks impact fee.
The answer is yes, we can. So a couple of years ago, the state legislature passed a bill updating what traffic impact fees can be used for. They technically renamed them to transportation impact fees. And so, yes, they can be used for multimodal trails.
Okay, that's great. And I think that it is a huge opportunity as developments come in. Most developers that I know would put the trail in because it's a value to their community if they have the opportunity specifically to get TIF credits that they can use. And so having that listed as a TIF would be a huge opportunity for us to complete some of those gaps and, provide that connectivity that we desperately need.
Absolutely, and I will note that that is in the recently adopted Transportation Capital Facilities Plan does contemplate trail projects as well as road projects.
Ms. Lust, you mentioned the state allows for TIF fees to go to trails and other multimodal. Has the city done that thus far?
I would have to check and get back to you. It's a fairly new paradigm for TIF, but I know at least a few projects where we've been in like the pre-app and land use phase. We've talked about it and it'll happen.
Great.
Something just came to mind before we move on to the rest of the commissioners. I don't know if this is a transportation topic, but one of the things I heard a lot from public comment today was boats and the opportunity for supporting some level of boat access. I know it's a method of transportation. It's not like it, is the Columbia we're having, shipping lanes, but maybe something that we can consider as part of our transportation topics, or maybe even the recreation topics. But either one, it would be great to see something that addresses boats.
I had a couple things. In the section, page 25, under travel demand and trip reduction, I'm not sure if it belongs here or not, but there was kind of specific areas identified as, future development in the Carty Road, South Hillhurst Road should incorporate safe and direct bike lanes and stuff. And there wasn't a mention that I saw in this document about bike lanes on Pioneer. And I just wondered if that was something that would be appropriate to include in some place, because that seems like one major artery that a lot of us like to use for either walking, running, or biking. And we do not have consistent, hardly any good bike trails along Pioneer. So I just thought that could be added. The other thing I had was, where was it? There were a couple things here. one of them might be in a different section. But on policy 3.2.2, about engaging residents in traffic management and safety initiatives, encourage educational programs that teach youth safe walking and bicycling behaviors. I wondered if we needed to specify e-bicycling behaviors because it's become such a different way that we see our young people exploring the city, and I saw a kid on the ground off his e-bike the other day, and that's just, that's happening. So that would be something else to maybe incorporate either there or elsewhere.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Ms. Lust, on could we step back for a second and talk about TIF? Because I have a little bit of confusion. So TIF eligible projects include, as an example, curb to curb, roadway, travel lanes, stormwater management, etc. But at the end of that paragraph, capital projects that are not eligible for TIF may be constructed by private developers to meet city street standards, or they may be funded as part of public projects. So I guess as clarification, not all public projects are TIF related, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. The way that was worded, it just kind of threw me for a loop. In the mall area, farther down that page, to your knowledge, are the engineering specifications complete for that? Because it says the mall area will include dedicated bicycle and pedestrian facilities, or is that planned?
That's based on existing street sections in the engineering standards.
So it's in place, or it is in place?
The standards are in place.
Yeah, right.
As part of the engineering standards, yeah. There is a standard cross-section for the Carty Road corridor.
Right, okay,
Yes.
all right. And then, I guess the same applies to the North Industrial Expansion Area. I wasn't aware that we, as a city, were planning to expand to the north for industrial. I thought most of that was going to be on the east side.
So it's assigned that name as what we've been naming it throughout the planning process, because it's currently under an industrial urban reserve overlay. But in council's preferred land use alternative, it does not come in as industrial. It's a mixed use area.
Okay, all right, thank you. On page 26, the last paragraph, we talk about golf cart facilities. And I guess my question is, what exactly is that? I mean, I'm a golfer, so I understand golf carts, but I guess, and I know when you come into downtown from Pioneer, it indicates a golf cart designated area. But what does the word facility imply?
Sure. I think that is to be defined as part of our parks planning process. I know they are looking at what it would mean to expand the golf cart compatible network in the city, whether that means allowing golf carts on the higher class multimodal trails, looking more into what classification of streets golf carts are not allowed to use, cross, et cetera. I think that's why golf carts specifically are mentioned there and being tied to facilities, is that is something that's being looked at as our Parks and Capital team folks look at updating their own plans. So
Okay.
just creating a connection there.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gordon, did you reference 3.2.2 relative to the e-bikes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I won't go into that. 3.2.5, construct sidewalks to fill in missing gaps within downtown and to link downtown to residential neighborhoods. To a certain extent, you have that now to Hillhurst, but you don't have it up towards like Royal or that area. So I guess my suggestion is the wording should be changed to include that, so that people could either bike or walk, let's say from Royal down to downtown for greater access. And are festival streets only on like Main Street, or can the city designate any street within the city limits as a festival street?
Yeah, that would be a question of policy direction. The vision is for things like farmers market and for Saturdays,
right?
Being able to designate streets that are temporarily closed for community events. Again, this is a high-level policy direction. If it needs to be more specific, would be welcome to incorporate feedback to that effect.
Okay, I understand. Do we allow block parties in this area? I mean, in Washington State, or I'm from the Midwest originally, and so it's typical. You ask the city if you could have a block party, and they block off part of the street for like that subdivision or whatever. But I haven't seen one in Ridgefield in all the years I've lived here. Do we allow that?
You know what, I'm not sure of the answer to that. Probably something I'd need to check with our PD about. They would likely be involved.
Okay.
No, I don't know if anyone's gone through having or requesting one. I personally haven't, so I'm not sure.
All right. In a way, it's kind of like a festival street. So that's why I was asking the question. Okay. 3.2.7, curb cuts. Are we meaning industrial or commercial curb cuts, or are we talking residential as well? That's in 3.2.7.
It'd be good to clarify, but how that is worded is meant for larger scale commercial
Okay.
industrial areas.
Okay, all right. So we should clarify that. Thank you. This also is connected to transportation, but policy 3.3.3. Pursue innovative alternative transportation options. I would like to see the city move more towards alternative fuel vehicles, such as either natural gas or electric or hydrogen powered. I mean, we see them on like our garbage trucks and other service vehicles. And I think it would be compatible with not only the transportation that we're trying to align with the comprehensive plan, but also with climate change. And just a minor point on 3.4.3, road diets and center turn lanes. Generally, road diets include center turn lanes, so in my opinion, that's a redundant term. And that's all I have. Thank you.
folks, we've reached the halfway point in the meeting, so just 90 more minutes and we'll unlock the doors and you can go home. Ms. Lust, just one question from me, and that it has to do with something that we spoke about during the city tour last month. There's a lot of talk in here as far as safety and walkability and interconnected trails, but I don't see a whole lot about signage on those trails. And I think anyone who's tried to walk a trail, if you don't have your phone out, you get lost pretty quick. And so it'd be great if that was a point of emphasis as far as safety and connectivity. Thank you. And that's it. You can take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Moving on. Our third topic is housing. Housing element, again, one that is super intrinsically tied with the land use element. Here, the overarching goal, support diverse housing supply, meeting the needs of current and future residents. Again, population growth is projected to drive demand for about 5,800 new housing units by 2045. And we are mandated by the state through this growth plan update to look at how we would accommodate housing affordable to different income levels across the whole range. And as I mentioned, of course, housing needs closely tied to land use as well as transportation, infrastructure, access to jobs and services. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Some highlights of the draft goal and policy language: providing a diverse housing supply to meet needs of residents across income levels, household types, and life stages. Tied to that, expanding housing choice and affordability through a mix of housing types. Directing housing growth to areas with infrastructure and services. Promoting complete walkable neighborhoods, supporting quality of life. Encouraging equitable housing opportunities, reduce barriers to housing production, especially regarding affordable housing as mandated, and coordinating housing, land use, and transportation planning in accommodating future growth. Okay. Vice Chair, back to you.
Any thoughts or questions from the commissioners?
Ms. Lust, on page 35 and 36, we talk about identifying 219 emergency shelter beds. And so my question's related to that. Do we have them now?
We do not. This is part of our requirement from the state of Washington. All jurisdictions planning in this cycle have to contemplate not just total housing needed to accommodate growth, but housing needed to accommodate folks living at different income levels. And part of that scale is permanent supportive housing. Now the directive is to accommodate, not necessarily directly provide through the comp plan. So it's about allowing those use types in certain zoning, and that's would be part of the implementation through code of this, is figuring that out.
And who came up with the 219 number? I mean,
So,
was that the city
yeah.
or the county or?
That is all based on a housing tool created by the state, the Department of Commerce. Basically takes the allocation. So the state gives the counties growth projections through their planning horizon. So for us through 2045, the county, it's their responsibility to work with jurisdictions to basically say, how is that going to be split up across our area in a way that makes sense based on existing land supply and zoning. And then it's the city's and the county's responsibility to figure out individually what that land use scheme looks like. So that 219 number, that comes from the state allocated the county X amount of housing units. The county allocates each of the cities X amount of housing units. And then that is split down between different income levels based on land availability and need.
Okay, all right. But we don't have like a target date to do that, do we?
We do not.
Okay.
The one requirement we have in implementing the housing element is as part of the same bill or set of bills that created these requirements to be accommodating housing at different income bands, there is a requirement for basically a 5-year check-in. So whereas the next comp plan update will be in 10 years, we're required to, in 5 years, basically track our progress. But beyond that, there's no specific date or deadline.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, as a city or municipality, do we have a legal requirement to reach a certain level of, or a percent of affordable housing? I mean, I hear different reactions to that.
There's no legal requirement for a specific percentage. We are bound to the legislation that is requiring us to create tools to accommodate that growth with what you see in the table, like X number of units at X income level.
Okay.
But we meet that requirement through a number of tools, through zoning, through development regulations, through incentives, et cetera. There's not one percentage that the city or other jurisdictions are bound to meet.
Okay, all right, thank you. I've had it. I've used my time up. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. All right, Ms. Lust, take it away.
Thank you very much. Okay, the last section we're going to talk about this evening is the climate element of the comprehensive plan. This is an interesting one. We're part of the first cohort of cities and counties that's mandated to have a climate element of the comprehensive plan. So this is not part of our comp plan during the last cycle. So it's been really interesting to see how it works as a standalone element, as well as how it ties into all the other elements, because there's certainly policies throughout land use, transportation, parks and recreation, really every other part of the comp plan that do touch climate. Again, that's House Bill 1181 is what is mandating this work. Like all of these, then it's up to the local jurisdictions to figure out how to do it in a way that makes sense. So there are two sub-elements. One is greenhouse gas emissions reduction, and the other is climate resiliency. So that's sort of what we've been focused on contemplating through these goals and policies. Okay, another factor in there is the bill emphasizes protection of vulnerable communities and community assets, resiliency through infrastructure, emergency services, and again, coordinating policy and implementation across different elements. Okay, some key goal and policy direction: integrate climate resilience into long-range planning and development regulations, capital facilities planning, reduce greenhouse gas emissions through efficient growth, again, walkable mixed-use areas, multimodal transportation options, protect natural resources, improve community preparedness for climate-related hazards, promote sustainable development practices, and to sum up, prioritize resilient infrastructure and services to protect public health, safety, environmental quality, and quality of life as Ridgefield grows. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. Any questions?
No questions, but just an oddly specific comment on item 9.6. So one of the opportunities I think that kind of goes overlooked on greenhouse gas is the impact our engineering standards have. And beyond even just greenhouse gas, reducing urban heat island effect, things like that. I mean, we have street sections that sometimes might be too wide, that we could allow for exceptions or narrower street sections, especially if we get into more hilly, steep terrain projects. But one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is what goes on underneath the street. Ridgefield has a pipe zone backfill requirement that requires gravel to be placed within the pipe zone. So all of that dirt you haul out goes into a truck, then gets transported to a pit, then they pick up gravel and bring it back in a truck and put it into the same hole. And so you have tons of truck traffic that you're just putting all of that greenhouse gas in the air. And in the long run, and some of the civil engineers in the audience may disagree with me, but I've studied this quite a bit. You have differential settlement in the street. And so in the long run, you have clay soils in this area predominantly that will expand over time. And then your pipe zone will stay the same. So your streets will go poof, and your pipe zone will stay the same, which means your streets will crack and weather worse over time than if you just buried the same native dirt back into the trench that it came from. So you're not only reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but you're creating longevity in your streets. So I think that that's an opportunity. Plus it helps with affordable housing because now you just save multiple millions of dollars on every single development. So it's hugely expensive and lots of trucks. But yeah, I mean, overall, just trying to audit our engineering standards and how it relates to some of these policies, because there's real opportunities, I think, to align those two.
That's a good lesson there, everyone.
Sorry.
No, that was,
I had to take my land development head off.
That was terrific. Any questions or comments?
Well, as someone who has had so many trucks of rock going past my house
me
and
too.
taking out the dirt, yes, love that. It actually made me think, and I don't know that it fits in here, but one of my pet peeves has to do with when the city has new areas of plantings, like in a center strip, and they're using rock, because rock holds heat. It does not reduce the heat in the area. And if we were planting shrubs or more native plants, which is outlined in this, in those areas instead, and having them grow over and cover instead of using rocks so often, I think it could be helpful. Not sure it fits in there, but that just made me think of it. A couple questions I had were on policy 9.5.1. I just wondered if you could describe what a resilience hub looks like in concrete terms. What do you think that means? And what would that look like for our city to have resilience hubs?
Yes, this is a concept we've talked about in relation to, community preparedness for climate-related hazards. And it would be about working with our partners to identify physical locations that would be, continue to be or be appropriate places for things like heat or cold shelters.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
All right.
Yeah.
And just a little below that, policy 9.5.5, prioritize distribution of educational materials. I just felt like that's sounds a little antiquated in these days of I pictured flyers and booklets, and I think the most effective is social media campaigns for really getting this sort of message to people. So if that's appropriate, it seems like that could be added in there, not to take out the educational materials, we should educate, but maybe the social media aspect of that, I feel like that's more the way people learn about things.
Ms. Lust, when we talk about vehicle miles traveled, I think it'd be fair to state that the figures on page 77 were pre-Union Ridge. Would that be correct? Those figures were generated prior to Union Ridge coming online?
Those figures are from 2024, I believe. I can verify that.
Okay. All right. Well, my comment to that would be, it'll be interesting in 3 to 5 years to see what the VMT is like after Union Ridge is more fully developed. Okay. A comment relative to vulnerable communities on 80 and climate resiliency on 81. You know, I'll try not to get on my green roof bandwagon, but green roof technology really helps dissipate urban heat and urban heat zones. And I really would like to see the city move forward with that, starting with the planning department. Page 84, 9.1.1, integrate building features that reduce the impacts of natural hazards, such as heat. Well, again, green roofs. And I understand the climate here historically has not been like, let's say, Southern California or Arizona or even like Chicago in the summertime. But it seems like since I've been here, each year we're getting more days that are, you know, we're getting more 90-degree days, as an example. And I think it'd be forward of the city to start thinking about when developers, especially commercial developers, are proposing a development that they have like a parking area with shade and like solar panels. I mean, I think that's very forward. And I would like to see the city move in that direction in the future. Policy 9.1.4, encourage solar access through site designs for new residential and commercial buildings wherever feasible. I would like to propose that we change that verb from encourage to facilitate. Nine point 2.1, support the coordination of land use and multimodal transportation planning to improve the efficiency of the transportation system and reduce GHG emissions and VMT. I think we should include a statement including expanding bus routes to downtown and to the recreational complex on Hillhurst. Because right now, I don't think they go there. Is that correct? Or am I wrong?
No, you're correct. Citrian goes partway down Pioneer with regular service and then has the connector.
Right. 9.2.2, again, this just goes back to my wish that the city, in the city purchasing policy, moves forward with alternative fuel vehicles? How do we facilitate the installation of EV charging infrastructure for private residential and commercial buildings? How does the city do that?
We are currently as a code requirement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I know it's not within the Planning Commission or the Planning Department's purview, but 9.3.5, I would really like to see the city, this is something for the Parks Department and the City Council. I would really like to see the city move forward to become a tree city. There are a number of tree cities across the nation. It's a requirement. It's not easy to obtain, but it's a legacy once it has become established, for our kids and grandkids, right? So on page 86, 9.6.1, pursue composting programs. Why don't we do that now? I mean, what is to stop the city from saying, we're going to compost? Like Portland, as an example. I don't know if Vancouver or any other Clark County cities do that, but.
Yeah, I don't know the full details to answer that question, but I suspect it has to do with our partnership with Waste Connections and the services they're offering at this time.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick one.
Go for it.
Policy 9.1.2 is on promoting the use of efficient energy systems. A similar question to, I think, facilitate was the verb earlier. What is the scope of means and methods and tools when we say promote efficient energy systems?
Yeah, I think we can use a number of different verbs there, but usually promote would translate to some sort of code language, either requiring or tying incentives to.
So insofar this evolves into requiring, I see we talk about looking at this at the building level for both new and existing buildings. I would encourage exercising some precision when thinking through policy, because these can have different impacts on different types of residents. So for example, a retailer versus food service, lack of access to gas utility has a very different burden. Thank you.
Anything else for Ms. Lust? Not at this time.
All right, thank you so much, commissioners. Really appreciate the feedback. There aren't any more comments for the good of the order. I'll just go ahead and move on to next steps. So we, in this group, already reviewed economic development, public facilities, parks and rec, arts, culture, and heritage. City Council has a study session tomorrow where they'll be doing a similar exercise that you all did. And your feedback's included in the presentation, so they'll be able to see that as well. Similarly, we'll be taking these elements to them probably across the next month or two. And then there are 3 more elements that we'll need to bring before you all. These are environment, annexation, and public participation. So you'll be seeing those coming up as next steps. We are currently working to finalize and issue our SEPA determination for the comp plan update. We mostly rely on the county's work, and they issued their final SEPA analysis a couple weeks ago, and the smaller cities within the county are all sort of nested under that, but we do have to, as kind of a closeout to that, issue our own findings based on their studies and do that. So we're working on that. We are working on some of our reporting to Department of Commerce. We have to give them at least 60 days notice of any potential adoption. So we're thinking ahead and pulling together documentation to be able to send drafts to them for their review and comment. We are working on some minor updates to those capital facilities plans that were adopted in 2024 and 2025, just to make sure they're still tracking with everything we're working on in the comp plan. And then looking ahead, as I've mentioned a couple times, kind of the first big and ongoing implementation of an adopted comprehensive plan is updating the municipal code to make sure it's appropriately implementing the goals and policies and appropriately implementing legislative requirements that have sort of come up during the period since we started this update. So that is, not next week, not next month, but to contextualize all this and make sure Planning Commission is aware of some farther down the line work that we'll all be doing together. That is what I have for you this evening. Again, thank you for contributing to the conversation, and I'll hand it back over.
One quick question, Ms. Les. I know there's since the beginning challenges with the county's proposed comp plan with their land use alternatives, and since we're nested under all of that stuff, what happens when theirs inevitably gets challenged? I mean, there's two different groups that are battling out what they're proposing, and now there's even more kind of coming in out of the fray.
So I will note that what the county council adopted as their preferred land use alternative does align largely with our council's preferred alternative. So yeah, that was a lot of the work over the past several months was trying to reach some sort of consensus there that would work for both parties, and what they had adopted is what our council supports. Inevitably, in a comp plan process, whatever is adopted, there are appeals. And that's where we, turn to our record of the work we've done in these meetings, in council meetings, in coordination with the county, just to paper that we've gone through the process thoroughly and correctly.
Okay, so if we're still substantially consistent with whatever they're proposing, then maybe we're probably fine, even though their portions are being appealed. From everything I understand, it's their land use components in their specific jurisdiction. It has nothing to do with the other jurisdictions, right? But it has to do with like high density and places like Hazeldale. So.
Yes, I do think you're correct that the county level is where those appeals occur.
Okay, so I guess my bigger question is, if that appeal happens, are we delayed in our implementation at the city level if it has nothing to do with our jurisdictional boundaries because we're nested underneath the county?
That's such a good question. I've been so focused on any parts that would be within our jurisdictional boundaries, to be honest. That's something I'd love to talk with our city attorney about and get back to you.
Yeah, I just know it's coming, and I would love to move forward with all of our stuff that we know is good and fine, but I know their stuff is going to get appealed, so.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Lust? Not at this time. Ms. Lust, anything else?
Not right now, thank you.
All right. It's time to party, everyone. We have now reached the second public comment period of the evening. Anyone wishing to address the commission, please step forward at this time. Limit your 3-minute comments to 3 minutes, please, or face the gavel. Please state your name before.
Dion Hess, I got this
Thank you,
right.
Dion.
I want to bring up one thing Ms. Gordon had brought up about the e-bikes and the things like that. That is something that's, it's my wife had, just a couple days ago saw one pull right out and slam into a car. Fortunately, the kid wasn't hurt, but that is something that needs to be addressed because you're starting to see very serious injuries happen in other cities, if not here. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I should mention anyone online, please use the raise hand feature so the clerk will unmute you.
Hello again. My name is Robin Knight, Ridgefield resident. I have a few additional questions and concerns regarding the waterfront mixed-use code. First, the view corridor exceptions. Section E.5 allows obstruction of up to 2 of the 8 protected view corridors. This can be decided through a Port Commission resolution and a Type 2 review. Again, a staff-level decision by the planning director. The Planning Commission does not appear to have a formal role in the decision at all. Again, correct me if I'm wrong on this stuff. Just trying to figure it out. I would like to ask, should a decision of this significance protecting views to our National Wildlife Refuge bypass the Commission and the public entirely when it is the public and downtown homeowners that will be directly impacted? And if you believe you should have a role in this decision, what would it take to add one? My second concern is regarding height exemptions. The 75-foot roof cap excludes rooftop mechanical equipment, parapets, and other architectural features with screening conditions, but no stated limit on how much additional height those features can add. The port continues to tell us that no buildings will ever reach 75 feet at the waterfront, but the port also continues to lose the trust of residents who have become disillusioned by the mixed messages, conflicting information, and non-answers to direct questions that we continue to receive. So I would like to ask the Commission whether you feel that these height limits should be revisited, and if so, what would it take to do that? Third, and this ties back to my first comment period, limited uses under the Waterfront Mixed Use Code require a Port Commission resolution stating that the use, quote, was anticipated in the master plan approved by the city, unquote. Since the port continues to tell us that phase 1 is already confirmed and that the hotel as part of that is not going away, I would like to understand which master plan document currently satisfies that requirement, whether it had any public review, and whether it is publicly available. Given the specificity of some of the questions I've asked tonight, I do plan to submit these comments and questions in writing and would respectfully request a written follow-up response. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the commission may step forward at this time.
Thank you. David Mason, Chapter 2. I moved here 14 years ago. There was a beautiful road going up over the hill called Taverner Ridge. It's now Tavernless Ridge. The Taverner geese used to fly that and land on the farms that grew corn to feed their cows, and I understand that this is progress. I've heard a couple of terms several times tonight, mandated, bound, one of Ms. Luss' slides that I was reading, she skipped over middle and high density housing. I don't know whether that was intentional or she was just trying to move things along. I see what happened to Taverner Ridge, and I'm drawn to this piece that I got from I'm not sure whether it's the city or the port, Ridgefield Waterfront Facts. And it seems like one thing, or this is simple, but there's a question: how can this project continue when there hasn't been a traffic analysis, environmental impact analysis, and evaluation of other impacts? And their answer is analysis of traffic impacts, environmental impacts, critical areas, and other impacts are a key part of the development process. This project has yet to begin the development process, so these have not occurred yet. What? I don't understand that. It seems like we have statistics showing how many vehicle trips are going to be going down or through Ridgefield in 2045. Why can't we do that now? Seems like it'd be a really simple way to address the issue of the port, because I don't see Pioneer Street being able to accommodate what is proposed down at the port. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so a couple things I want to talk about. So Shauna Fisher, Ridgefield resident. So first thing, it's like really cool little segue, because I wasn't planning to talk about this, but now I am. So sidewalks, sidewalks, and sidewalks. Right here is something that happened on a Ridgefield sidewalk. So I think, I'll just tell you what happened. So I was on one of the Walk With Me Wednesday walks, you know, the Ridgefield Heritage Society, really educational, really amazing walk. Walking in front of the post office, you know, resident or non-resident of the city should be able to walk down a sidewalk, and the sidewalk should be even, right? It should be easy to walk on, no problem, right? So I was walking on the sidewalk, and there was a spot that was uneven, and I landed and I fractured my 5th metacarpal. So not so fun, right? It could have been worse, right? At least I didn't crack my head open or something like that. And I did reach out to the city, and they did ground down that part of the sidewalk, which is great. But still, as we grow in the 2045 plan, I think it'd be really important for Ridgefield to address sidewalks, you know, especially, you know, all the sidewalks downtown, and where you want to like bring the, you know, the RISE initiative and all that. I think it's really important to address the sidewalks and have them be like safe for people to enjoy walking down the sidewalk, right, without the risk of injury. So anyway, so there's that. And then also too, the waterfront, right? It is such a sacred, important place. And I've talked to a lot of people canvassing, passing out flyers, and a lot of people don't really understand, you know, they're like, oh yeah, development would be great, but they don't really, until you tell them, oh, this is what's proposed, they're like, oh, no, I'm not for that. And just a real quick scale thing, Legacy Trails Apartments, right now it has 195 units. At Legacy Trails Apartments, there is 422 parking spots. I got that directly from them. So how do they propose that that's going to work downtown? It's not something that fits in Ridgefield, like build housing elsewhere and keep it unique for recreation. And there's so much more they could do. Maybe they could build like a cool like walking labyrinth down there. You know, there's so much other things that could be done that preserve and keep the uniqueness, because it's not any other, I'm like, I can't see how much time I have left, it's so hard. It's not like any other waterfront. It's unique, and let's keep it the way it is, because that's what people come here for, is for the waterfront and escape. So let's preserve it and keep it nature-centric and maybe more recreational stuff. And, you know, sometimes it's not about the economics. It's about, you know, what brings people together, and there's other ways that the port can drive economics as well as the city. So thank you. There you go.
Remarkable timing. Sir?
Good evening. My name's Doug Colmeyer, resident here in Ridgefield. Several years ago, my wife and I reached a plateau in our lives where we decided to retire. And where do we go? What do we do? And we decided we want to stay here in Ridgefield for a lot of reasons. The waterfront was one of those, the refuge, and the proximity to kayaking on the river, fishing on the river, which I love to do, recreate on the refuge and look at the wildlife. I also am a duck hunter, so we're able to hunt on the refuge during the right seasons. And, you know, last Saturday, August 1st, the Columbia River opened up for Chinook salmon fishing again. And for those people who fish, this is like world-class fishing out here. Best salmon I've ever had in my life. As I was coming back, unsuccessfully, but coming back right here off of Ridgefield, there were dragon boat races going. And there's tents all along there with teams rooting each other on. boat ramp's about pretty crowded. It was about half the parking lot's full. Pulled my boat out, drove up. First Saturday's going on in Ridgefield. There's a lot of traffic and a lot of action going on the waterfront. I appreciate what you folks do. I know you get the picture by all the comments that were here. And it made me smile of how wonderful this community is and how active the waterfront is. And I don't want to see it change. And I urge you to intervene. I don't believe the port commissioners are listening. And you have some power through your chain of command to be able to influence what happens in the future. And I'm very happy to see so many people active in the community. Recently, well, a couple years ago now, on Hillhurst near our home, the commercial property that now has Cheeky Noodles and FICA and so forth, there was a different developer trying to develop that. And they wanted to put a mini mart and a gas station, and all the neighbors got together and said, not in our neighborhood. And we went to the public meeting, and you folks may be familiar with that, and the developer backed out. So people have the power to make change or influence. I'm confident something's going to happen on the waterfront. I just want it to be something that all of our people can use. I'm opposed to a hotel and residential apartments and condos and those kinds of things, but please use your influence and help facilitate a positive plan. Thank you.
Ryan Williams, Ridgefield, Washington. So I'm new to, I've never been to a planning commission meeting before. I've never been to a port planning meeting before either, or their workshops. I've attended 3. It's really nice to see a commission that is engaged and asking questions. At these port commissions or workshops that I've been to, the commissioners sit silent and they let their director tell them what the plan is. They don't ask questions, and if they do, it's very rare. You guys seem very engaged, and that's how I think these commissions should work, right? Also, you had some interest in climate change and resiliency on one of your slides. I was here in 1996 when there was the flood, and I took my drift boat down and helped people on the houseboats get property and pets and everything to shore. We realized climate change are making some of these storm events quite a bit bigger. I mean, do we really think that that property down there is immune from a major disaster? And then we're going to put residential housing down there and a hotel down there? I mean, it's just possible. I don't know what, I tried to look up the floodplain as we were having this meeting tonight and see if I could give you like solid numbers. I couldn't do it in the time I had. But thank you very much for listening to all of us.
Thank you. If there's anyone else?
Okay, thank you again. And I want to, what he said was great because I do feel like I'm being listened to when dealing with the port and the mayor. It's very frustrating because it seems like for some reason they don't care. And looking at that document that was up there, there were things that concerned me. So for example, on page 52 of 56, the composite scores for vulnerability, Lake River scored high and the refuge scored medium high. And part of it is development pressure, pollution, stream health, and that type of stuff. And so to me, if part of the goal for the planning committee and this whole Envision 2045, if this is something that's of a concern, then why are we developing right next to the National Wildlife Refuge? I live in a rural property, but I'm lucky enough that the birds fly over my house, and I love it, and that will be gone. I love going down. It's always around New Year's and listening to the trumpeter swans. They'll be gone. Once that's all developed, it'll be gone. And supposedly, commissioner said, well, when there was all the pollution, they adapted. They'll just adapt again. Like, we don't really care about the wildlife. They adapted when it was a brown space. They'll adapt again. So to me, that loss of green space is going to be a loss of more habitat. When the Wildlife Refuge had a workshop, there was a visiting biologist who said, yes, this will be negatively impacted. And that refuge was made to protect that wildlife. And they said, yes, you're going to see that be negatively impacted. Recreation is listed on your goals and policy direction, then you should support changing the waterfront plans. It should, because right now it does negatively impact the fishing community that's used that space forever. And it almost feels like they're trying to push them out. I spoke to somebody who was a fire commissioner. They're super concerned about there's one way in and one way out. There's no other proposal. There's a walking bridge, but one way in, one way out. In that presentation, the whole GHS, greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Why are you going to put a high-density housing development and a hotel so far away from the freeway and away from all the amenities? That makes no sense. Also concerned is the developer is the one who pays for the traffic study. How convenient. Hold on, I just was writing stuff frantically as you guys were presenting. But I'm just asking if you can do something to make a change, because I know that there's concerns. I talked to a bus driver. She's like, I already struggle getting around with the school kids from the elementary school. How is this going to happen? Their proposal to turn it into one-way streets isn't going to fix it. I spoke to several elementary school parents. It's already a nightmare to pick up my kids. How is this going to look when you add all that development? So thank you for what you're doing. I hope you can help create a change. We understand it's going to be developed, but it should be something special that really reflects how special Ridgefield is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please step forward at this time.
Nervous. Leanna Berg, Ridgefield resident. I'm a dragon boater. I was at the races on Saturday. 75% of that field from Division Street to the pump house was full. So my question about that is, where are those people going to go when we have that event? My answer to that would be, the race is going to leave Ridgefield. I'm a numbers person, so here's a couple other numbers. 250 apartments equates to about 500 cars. Most of those are probably going to be both people working. That's 1,000 trips a day up and down Pioneer. On your slide up there that talked about in decreasing miles, how does that decrease miles when they're traveling, 1,000 cars are traveling up and down, not 1,000 cars, but 500 twice a day. The view shed and the height of buildings, at the Osprey Pole, that elevation is about 40 feet above sea level. At Abrams Park, it's about 80 feet above sea level. So if you're building 45 to 75 feet high buildings, they're going to be taller than the streets of Ridgefield in that little area, which seems really out of proportion to me. So like everyone else, please revisit, apply your great plan that you have going to what the Ridgefield development is happening down there, and let's see if we can preserve that place, because it's too beautiful to mess up with development. Thanks. Nervous.
You did a great job. If there's anyone else who'd like to step forward at this time, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. If there's anyone online who'd like to address the Planning Commission, please use the raise hand feature. Going once, going twice. Public comment period is closed. Staff reports.
Great, thank you. Just one thing to report, which is that council did appoint a commissioner to fill former Commissioner Glavin's empty seat. His name is Michael Hornbeck. He will be joining us starting during the September meeting, so we'll have his swearing in then, and then we will be whole. So very happy to have him on board. I met with him earlier this week. Seems like has some very genuine enthusiasm for the work we're doing. Yeah, and then as I mentioned earlier, the first batch of elements that y'all reviewed in July, council will be reviewing at a study session tomorrow in this room. And then, yeah, we'll continue moving forward. That's all I have. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Lust. From the commissioners, let's just start down on the end.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Last month, we did the Magical Mystery Bus Tour. And what we did was we went to so many parks in the city, which I didn't realize we had. Some were small subdivision Some were larger, some are undeveloped, some are developed, some are new, some are old. It was quite an eye-opener, and it was very informative, and I appreciated the opportunity to do that. That's all I have.
I just want to say to the many people that showed up tonight that we're listening. We appreciate the turnout. We appreciate your thoughtful comments. You're clearly digging deep and finding facts and information that need to be considered. It's unclear to me as a planning commission person how much direct involvement we will have. I don't know for sure. But I certainly live in this community the same way most of you do. I walk at the refuge with my dog. I love it down there. I moved here. I see the beauty. I'm a native plant enthusiast. I work hard in my personal time to protect the environment we have in our community because I think it's one of our assets, and I do think it's our identity. I think it's a huge part of the reason people ever come to Ridgefield has to do with visiting our refuge. And it is hard to see how a so-called boutique hotel and a large apartment complex could really be compatible with that side by side. So I just want to appreciate the energy that people are putting into caring for this beautiful community. That's all I have.
It's after 8 and I turn into a pumpkin, so my words are not going to be very good right now. But I will say, everybody, thank you very much for showing up. I said this at the last meeting, where there was about half the amount of people, if not actually less. The world is ran by the people that show up. And so by you guys being involved and speaking your mind, my hope is that those concerns are being taken into consideration by the developer, by the port, so that they can start implementing some of those items. I know for sure in whatever capacity that we can make change on this, have heard your guys' concerns, and we'll keep that in mind as we move into some of these code updates. So much appreciated.
I would just echo the sentiment of my fellow commissioners. Thank everyone for taking the time to participate in the discussion tonight. Reflecting the voice of the community is one of the reasons I was excited to seek working with this body, so I appreciate everyone's attendance. Please forward that on to everyone who is not with us anymore tonight. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. I'll make it quick too. Thanks to the city staff for preparing tonight and for staying late with all of us. Thanks to everyone for showing up. Hippies are people, and they're citizens, and they deserve to be heard. And the only way to do that, just to echo something we've heard earlier, is to show up, is to be a part of this process. And I think overall, the transparency involved has been lacking, and so it would behoove all of us, I think, to continue going to podiums and taking our 3 minutes and making ourselves heard. Lastly, I guess, just backing up to the city tour, great job by all those at the city who put that together. It was a lot of fun, and it was not 98 degrees, and the air conditioner did work, and everything was great. So thank you to all who were involved. And with that, we're adjourned.